You want me to do what now? Marcus stared at the holographic form floating above his desk, mandibles twitching in what he assumed was the Zekathar equivalent of a smirk. Submit a genetic sample for your xenobiology practicum, Professor Khazrat repeated, her crystalline exoskeleton catching the artificial light of the classroom. All students must provide one to graduate. It's standard procedure at the Galactic Science Academy. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat, specially designed to accommodate his unique bipedal frame. Being the only human at the most prestigious xenobiology institution in the known universe had its challenges, but this request was pushing it. Professor, with all due respect, why do you need my DNA? I'm just here to study alien life forms, not become a specimen myself. Precisely because you are studying alien life forms, Mr. Thompson. Your species is barely a century into its space age. Having a complete human genome on file would be invaluable for our database. The professor's antennae twitched with barely contained excitement. Great, Marcus thought. 3 years of busting my ass to be taken seriously, and now I'm about to become their lab rat. Fine, he sighed, reaching for the sample collector. But I want it noted that I'm doing this under protest. Noted, Mr. Thompson. Though I fail to see why you're being so difficult about a simple procedural matter. Marcus bit back a laugh. If only she knew the real reason for his reluctance. It wasn't about privacy or dignity. It was about the impossible secret he'd been keeping since his acceptance to the academy. A secret that was about to blow wide open. The next morning, Marcus sat in the laboratory, trying not to fidget as Professor Khazrat and her team analyzed his DNA sample. He watched their movements carefully, counting down in his head. 3, 2, 1. This cannot be correct. The professor's mandibles clicked rapidly. The Zekathar equivalent of stuttering. Run it again! A junior researcher adjusted several glowing controls on the quantum sequencer. Already did, Professor, 3 times. The results are consistent. Marcus suppressed a smile as chaos erupted in the lab. Various alien species, some crystalline like Khazrat, others gaseous or energy-based, all crowded around the holographic display of his genetic sequence. Impossible, Khazrat exclaimed. These markers, they're... Zekathar. Marcus finished for her, finally allowing himself to grin. Yeah, I know. About 15% of my genome, to be precise. Looks like humans aren't as primitive as everyone thought. The laboratory fell silent, save for the soft hum of equipment and the occasional crystalline tinking of shocked Zekathar scientists bumping into each other. But how? Khazrat's voice had dropped to a whisper. Marcus leaned back in his chair, enjoying the moment he'd been waiting 3 years to experience. Remember that primitive human mythology about ancient astronauts? Turns out some of those stories weren't myths after all. Your people visited Earth about 40,000 years ago, long enough to leave quite an impression on our gene pool. That's impossible, a gaseous researcher bubbled. The Council has no record of any official Zekathar expedition to Earth during that period. Who said anything about it being official? Marcus raised an eyebrow. From what we've pieced together, it was more like a spring break gone wrong. A group of young Zekathar scientists decided to do some unauthorized experimentation with early human populations. Real mad scientist stuff, totally illegal by today's standards. He watched as understanding slowly dawned across the various alien faces. That's right, you're looking at the result of the galaxy's oldest ethics violation. Some of your ancestors decided to play God with my ancestors' DNA, and, well... He gestured to himself. Here I am. Professor Khazrat's crystalline form had taken on a pale, almost translucent quality. This explains so much. Your unprecedented aptitude for xenobiology, your intuitive understanding of Zekathar biochemistry. And why I was so reluctant to submit a DNA sample, Marcus added. The human government has been keeping this under wraps for decades. We've known about the Zekathar genetic markers since we first mapped the human genome, but we wanted to understand the implications before going public. And now? Khazrat's antennae quivered with anticipation. Marcus smiled, pulling out a data crystal from his pocket. Now, I'm authorized to share everything we know. Turns out I'm not just here to study alien life forms. I'm here to help bridge the gap between our species. Because, technically speaking, Professor, you're not just my teacher, you're family. The laboratory erupted into chaos once again, but this time with excitement rather than shock. Questions flew from all directions. Theories were proposed and disputed. And through it all, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. The truth was finally out, and with it, humanity's place in the galactic community was about to change dramatically. 6 months later, Marcus stood before the Galactic Science Academy's graduation ceremony, preparing to deliver his valedictorian speech. The audience was a mix of species from across the known universe, including a notably large contingent of Zakthar, who had come to witness this historic moment. "When I first arrived at this academy," he began, "many viewed humans as primitive newcomers to the galactic stage. Some still do." This earned a few nervous laughs from the crowd. "But what I've learned here goes beyond xenobiology. I've learned that the history of life in our galaxy is more interconnected than any of us imagined." He paused, looking out at the sea of diverse lifeforms before him. The discovery of Zekthar DNA in the human genome hasn't just rewritten our understanding of human evolution. It's challenged our entire concept of species development. We're finding similar genetic markers in other races, evidence of ancient interactions that predate our recorded histories. Professor Kazrat, seated in the front row, nodded encouragingly. Over the past months, she had become not just his mentor, but a close friend and research partner. "Some have asked if this discovery changes anything. If knowing that humans carry Zekthar genes somehow makes us more advanced or worthy of our place here. But that's missing the point entirely." Marcus smiled, remembering all the late-night debates and breakthrough moments that had led to this understanding. "The truth is, we're all carrying pieces of each other's history in our DNA. The Zekthar markers in human genetics aren't a badge of superiority. They're evidence of something far more important, the fundamental interconnectedness of all life in this galaxy." He held up a fresh data crystal, its surface catching the light. "The research we've conducted over the past 6 months has revealed similar genetic signatures in dozens of species. Not just Zekthar influence, but evidence of countless ancient interactions between spacefaring races. We're not just discovering our past, we're uncovering a complex web of relationships that spans millions of years." The audience had fallen completely silent. Even the normally chatty gaseous beings were still. "So yes, humanity might be young in terms of space travel. We might still be figuring out the proper protocol for refueling at gas giant stations. And some of us might still get confused by 4-dimensional menu interfaces." This earned genuine laughter from the crowd. "But we're not just newcomers to the galactic community. We're returning to it. And this time, we're here to stay." Marcus raised his glass of ceremonial plasma, carefully adjusted to be safe for human consumption. "To the future of xenobiology. To the endless mysteries still waiting to be unraveled, and to the day when we finally understand just how deeply connected all life in this galaxy truly is." The ceremony hall erupted in a cacophony of cheers, clicks, whistles, and various other species-specific expressions of approval. As Marcus stepped down from the podium, Professor Kazrat approached him, her crystalline form glowing with pride. "You know," she said, her mandibles forming what he now recognized as a warm smile, "when you first arrived here, I thought teaching a human would be the greatest challenge of my career." Marcus grinned. "And now? Now I realize it was actually the greatest privilege." She extended a crystalline appendage, which he clasped firmly in the traditional Zakthar greeting between family members. "Though I still think you could have told me about the DNA thing before I assigned you all that extra homework on Zakthar biochemistry." "And miss out on acing every test? Not a chance?" Marcus laughed. "Besides, would you have believed me if I had told you on day one?" Kazrat's antennae twitched in amusement. "Probably not, but I would have loved to see you try to explain it." As they moved toward the graduation reception, where beings from across the galaxy were already engaging in animated discussions about the implications of their research, Marcus felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The truth was out, bridges were being built, and humanity's place in the galaxy was secure. And somewhere, he liked to think, those ancient Zekathar scientists who had decided to play God with human DNA were looking down, or up, or sideways. Dimensional perception was relative, after all. And thinking, well, that experiment turned out better than expected. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down, Marcus found himself in the Academy's observation dome, watching the swirling colors of the nearby nebula. Professor Kazrat joined him, her crystalline form refracting the stellar light into countless tiny rainbows. "So," she said, "what's next for the galaxy's most famous human Zekthar hybrid?" Marcus chuckled. "First, I'm going to keep reminding everyone that 15% doesn't make me a hybrid. And second," he pulled out another data crystal, this one glowing with an unusual purple hue. "Remember those genetic markers we found in other species? Well, I've been doing some additional analysis, and there's something interesting about the Arcturian genome that nobody's noticed yet. Kazrat's antennae perked up with interest. Mr. Thompson, are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? Professor, Marcus grinned. I think we're just getting started. The nebula's light painted patterns across the dome as teacher and student, now colleagues and family, began planning their next scientific adventure. After all, in a galaxy where ancient Zekthar scientists could accidentally create humanity's first step toward the stars, anything was possible. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, those long-ago researchers were definitely saying, I told you the experiment needed a larger sample size. You're telling me, Director Vilax of the Galactic Science Council said, his energy form flickering with skepticism, that the Arcturians, one of our oldest member species, have been carrying around Zekthar genetic markers for the past 1,000,000 years. And nobody noticed? Marcus and Professor Kezrat exchanged glances. They stood before the Council's emergency session, called specifically to address their latest findings. The chamber was filled with representatives from every major spacefaring civilization, their varied forms creating a living tableau of galactic diversity. Not exactly, Marcus replied, adjusting his formal diplomatic robes, designed by a committee of fashion-conscious aliens who'd watched too many human historical dramas. What we're saying is that both Arcturians and Zekthar share genetic markers that predate either of their civilizations. Someone, or something, was experimenting with DNA long before any of our recorded histories began. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of multilingual exclamations, forcing the universal translators to work overtime. Kazrat stepped forward, her crystalline form projecting authority. If I may, she clicked, bringing up a holographic display of intertwining DNA strands. These markers appear in 3 distinct species groups, Zekthar, humans, and Arcturians. But the fascinating part is their age. The human markers are relatively recent, 40,000 years. The Arcturian markers? They're over 2,000,000 years old. A gaseous council member wobbled excitedly. Are you suggesting? Yes, Marcus grinned. Whoever these ancient genetic engineers were, they didn't stop with one experiment. They've been running tests across our galaxy for millions of years. And here's the kicker. We found their signature. The holographic display shifted, zooming in on a particular sequence of genes. This pattern, Kazrat explained, appears in all 3 species. It's not random. It's a maker's mark. Someone wanted future generations to know their work when they saw it. Director Vilax's energy form pulsed rapidly. This is unprecedented. If what you're suggesting is true, then none of us are truly pure species, Marcus finished. We're all products of the galaxy's longest-running science experiment. And the best part? The experiment's still running. He pulled out another data crystal, this one pulsing with an eerily familiar pattern. 2 days ago, we detected new genetic modifications beginning to express themselves in all 3 species. Subtle changes, but they're accelerating. Whatever program these ancient scientists set in motion, it's entering a new phase. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, an Arcturian elder spoke, their crystalline vocals chiming like bells. What kind of changes? Marcus smiled. Enhanced neuroplasticity, improved genetic repair mechanisms, and most importantly, increased capacity for interspecies empathy and understanding. These aren't random mutations. They're deliberate upgrades, designed to activate when different species begin working together. Which means, Kazrat added, her antennae quivering with excitement, the more we cooperate, the more we evolve. Our ancient predecessors didn't just want to create new species. They wanted to create species that would eventually find each other and work together. The council chamber buzzed with discussion. Director Vilax's energy form stabilized into a thoughtful pattern. And you believe these changes are beneficial? Well, Marcus shrugged. I've been experiencing them for the past 6 months. And so far, the only side effect is an inexplicable craving for crystalline food structures. He winked at Kazrat, who had indeed been sharing her traditional family recipes with him. This is why we came to the council, Kazrat continued. These changes aren't just scientific curiosities. They're a message from our shared past, pointing toward our common future. We need to study them together as a unified galactic community. Director Vilax considered for a moment, his energy form shifting through various decision-making frequencies. Very well. The Council hereby authorizes the creation of a new research division, dedicated to studying these genetic modifications and their implications. Professor Kezrat, Mr. Thompson, We would like you to lead this initiative. Marcus bowed slightly, careful not to tip over in his ornate robes. We would be honored, Director, though I have one small request. Yes? Can we call it Project Ancestry? Ancient Genetic Modification Research Division doesn't have quite the same ring to it. The chamber filled with various species versions of laughter, breaking the tension. As Marcus and Kazrat left the council chamber, they could hear the excited discussions continuing behind them. You know, Kazrat clicked softly. When you first suggested presenting these findings to the council, I thought you were being overly optimistic. Marcus grinned. Remember what I said at graduation? We're all carrying pieces of each other's history. Kazrat's antennae quivered. Ready for what? The answer seemed to come from the DNA itself, resonating through their modified genes like a symphony reaching its crescendo. Ready to join them. They seeded the galaxy with life, guided our evolution, prepared us for this moment. And now, Director Vilax finished, his energy form pulsing with understanding. We're about to meet our makers. As if in response, every piece of technology in the laboratory activated simultaneously, displays showing the same coordinates. A location in intergalactic space that had been empty for as long as anyone had been watching. But it wasn't empty anymore. Something was emerging from the void between galaxies, something that defied conventional physics and exceeded their greatest imaginings. The Ancient Ones were returning, and thanks to their carefully orchestrated genetic modifications, their children were finally ready to welcome them home. Marcus looked at Kazrat, saw the same mix of terror and excitement in her crystalline features that he felt in his bones. Well, he said, managing a smile. I guess this explains why they needed such a large sample size. Somewhere in the vast expanse of space-time, the ancient scientists were definitely saying, finally, do you know how long we've been waiting for them to figure this out? The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the reunion that would change everything. Evolution had come full circle, and the real experiment was just beginning. The intergalactic void shimmered like heated air over desert sand. Marcus stood with Kazrat and the assembled representatives of the Galactic Council aboard the observation deck of the GSS Convergence, humanity's first contribution to the unified galactic fleet. They had chosen this vessel for its symbolic value, a ship designed through collaboration between all member species. Signal strength increasing, reported the Arcturian sensor operator, their crystalline form resonating with the incoming data. Whatever's coming through that distortion is operating on principles we've never encountered. Marcus felt it before he saw it. A peculiar resonance in his modified genes like a tuning fork being struck. From conversations with the others, he knew they were experiencing similar sensations, each filtered through their species' unique sensory apparatus. Look, Kazrat whispered, her crystalline form vibrating in harmony with the phenomenon. The void split open like a cosmic flower blooming in zero gravity. Through the opening came something. Marcus's human brain struggled to process what his eyes were seeing, even with his enhanced neural plasticity. The beings emerging from the rift existed in more dimensions than he could comprehend, their forms shifting between states of matter and energy with casual disregard for the laws of physics. Welcome, children, came a thought that somehow translated itself perfectly into every observer's native language. We have been watching your progress with great interest. Director Vilax's energy form pulsed with diplomatic protocol. On behalf of the Galactic Council, please, the thought interrupted, tinged with what felt like gentle amusement. Such formalities are unnecessary between family. Now we know we're carrying pieces of our future too. Speaking of pieces, Kazrat's mandibles twitched in amusement. Was that comment about crystalline food cravings a joke? Or should I be concerned about your dietary choices? Let's just say your family's crystal cake recipe is growing on me. Literally. I think I'm developing the enzyme needed to digest it. As they walked toward their new research facilities, the stars visible through the station's transparent walls seemed to twinkle with possibility. Somewhere out there, their ancient predecessors had set this all in motion, trusting that eventually, their various experiments would find each other and understand the greater purpose. You know what this means, don't you? Marcus said suddenly. What? Somewhere those ancient scientists are definitely saying, see? This is why you always include a control group. Kazrat's crystalline laugh echoed through the corridor, a sound that would have been incomprehensible to Marcus just a few years ago, but now felt as natural as human laughter. They had work to do, important galaxy-changing work. But first there was crystal cake to be eaten. After all, evolution is hungry work. Project Ancestry's central laboratory hummed with activity 6 months after its establishment. Holographic DNA strands danced through the air like exotic constellations, while researchers from 24 species collaborated on what had become the largest genetic study in galactic history. Marcus stood at his workstation, frowning at a particularly puzzling sequence of genes. "Hey, Kizrat," he called out. "Remember how we thought the changes were just affecting neural plasticity and empathy?" His mentor glided over, her crystalline form now bearing the distinctive iridescent markings of a senior research director. "Let me guess. You found something new?" "Look at this." Marcus highlighted a section of the floating DNA model. "These sequences aren't just changing, they're communicating. The modified genes in different species are actually synchronizing their activation patterns." Kazrat's antennae twitched rapidly, her equivalent of raising eyebrows. "That's impossible. Genes don't communicate across different organisms, let alone different species." "They're not supposed to," Marcus agreed, pulling up comparative data from human, Zakthar, and Arcturian test subjects. "But look at the temporal patterns. When one species experiences a genetic activation, the others follow within hours, even across light-years of space." "Quantum entanglement?" Kazrat suggested, her scientific training wrestling with the implications. "That's what we thought at first, but it's more complex than that." Marcus brought up another hologram, this one showing wave patterns that pulsed in perfect synchronization. "These modifications aren't just changes to our DNA. They're part of a galaxy-wide communication network that's been dormant for millions of years." Before Kazrat could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red warning lights bathed the laboratory in an ominous glow. "What now?" Marcus sighed. "Please tell me someone didn't try to feed the gaseous researchers solid food again." "No." Kazrat's voice was unusually serious. "Look at the primary monitor." The main display showed a cascade of genetic activations spreading across all observed species simultaneously. What had been subtle changes over months were now accelerating dramatically. "Get me the Council," Marcus ordered, already moving toward the emergency communications array. "They need to see this." Within minutes, the holographic forms of the Galactic Science Council materialized in the laboratory. Director Vilak's energy form crackled with concern. "Report, Mr. Thompson." "The genetic modifications we've been tracking?" Marcus gestured to the data streams surrounding them. "They just went into overdrive. Every tagged sequence in every studied species is activating simultaneously." "Effects?" The director's form pulsed urgently. "That's the strange part," Kazrat interjected, bringing up medical scans. "The subjects aren't showing any signs of distress. In fact, their neural activity is harmonizing." Marcus nodded. "It's like their brains are being tuned to the same frequency. And there's something else." He highlighted a particular data stream. "We're picking up what appears to be a signal embedded in the activation pattern." The council members leaned forward, those who had physical forms to lean with, anyway. "What kind of signal?" "That's what we're trying to figure out. It's not like any communication method we've seen before. It's older. Much older." As if on cue, the laboratory's lights flickered, and every display began showing the same repeating pattern. A complex sequence of pulses that seemed to resonate with something deep in the observer's genetic memory. "It's a key," Marcus whispered, sudden understanding dawning. "The ancient scientists didn't just modify our DNA. They used it to hide a message. A message that could only be decoded when different species learned to work together." Kazrat's crystalline form vibrated with excitement. "The genetic changes weren't the experiment. They were the preparation, making us ready for whatever this message contains." Director Vilax's energy form stabilized into a focused point. "Can you decode it?" Marcus looked at Kazrat, then at the assembled council members, beings from across the galaxy, all united in this moment of discovery. "Not alone, but together? I think that's exactly what we're meant to do." The next several hours were a blur of activity as researchers from every species contributed their unique perspectives to decoding the ancient signal. Humans provided intuitive leaps of logic, Zakthar added their crystalline precision, Arcturians contributed their deep understanding of temporal mathematics, and even the gaseous beings offered crucial insights into wave propagation patterns. Finally, as the nearby star was setting, the message began to take shape in their shared consciousness. It wasn't just words or images, it was something more fundamental, a deep understanding that transcended traditional communication. "They're coming back," Marcus said softly, the knowledge settling into his mind like a long-forgotten memory. "The ancient ones, they didn't leave. They've been waiting for us to prove we could work together, to show we were ready for the next step." Marcus stepped forward, drawn by an intuition he couldn't explain. "You're the ones who modified our DNA. the architects of galactic evolution. Yes and no, came the response. We guided your development, but the potential was always there. We simply accelerated certain processes. The Ancient One's forms coalesced into something more comprehensible, a swirling matrix of light and energy that pulsed in time with their thoughts. Your species, all of you, were chosen for your unique characteristics. Humans for their adaptability, Zekthar for their precision, Arcturians for their temporal perception, and so many others for their own special traits. But why? Kezrat asked, her scientific curiosity overriding any sense of protocol. Why spend millions of years guiding our evolution? The matrix shifted, displaying images of galaxies colliding and reforming. Because the universe is about to enter a new phase of existence. The barriers between dimensions are thinning. Reality itself is becoming fluid. Life as you know it will need to adapt or perish. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The genetic modifications, they're not just for communication, are they? They're preparation for these changes. Correct. The Ancient One's approval radiated through their shared genetic network. We have seeded countless galaxies with life, preparing for this moment. Only those species that learn to work together will survive what's coming. Is that why you waited until now to return? Director Velax asked. Until we proved we could cooperate? Precisely. Your recent breakthrough, the discovery of your shared heritage and your choice to embrace it rather than fear it, was the final test. Now we can begin the next phase of evolution together. The matrix expanded, encompassing the entire observation deck in a web of living light. The genetic changes you've experienced are just the beginning. We can show you how to consciously direct your own evolution, how to adapt to any environment, how to transcend the limitations of physical form. Marcus exchanged glances with Kezrat, seeing in her crystalline features the same mix of excitement and apprehension he felt. And if we refuse? The Ancient One's response carried no judgment, only simple truth. Then you will face what's coming unchanged and unprepared. The choice, as always, is yours. Director Velax's energy form flickered thoughtfully. This is not a decision we can make unilaterally. We must consult with our governments, our people. Of course, the Ancient Ones agreed. But remember, time is a luxury you may not have much longer. As if to emphasize their point, the void behind them rippled with strange energies, patterns that hurt the eyes and challenged the mind to comprehend. Marcus stepped forward again, something clicking into place in his modified consciousness. The experiment never ended, did it? This is still part of the test, seeing how we handle this choice. The matrix pulsed with what felt distinctly like pride. Very good, young one. Your species' intuitive leaps continue to impress. Then let me make an intuitive suggestion, Marcus said, surprising himself with his boldness. Instead of making this an all-or-nothing choice, why not start with a pilot program? A small group of volunteers from each species, working directly with you to understand these changes while reporting back to their people. Let us be the bridge between what we are and what we might become. The Ancient One's collective consciousness hummed with consideration. An interesting proposal. And who would you suggest for this program? Marcus gestured to the assembled beings on the observation deck. Us, the ones who first uncovered your genetic message. We're already modified, already working together, and already committed to understanding these changes. Let us be your proof of concept. Kezrat's crystalline form chimed in agreement. It would allow our peoples to see the benefits and challenges firsthand, through representatives they trust. Director Velax and the other council members buzzed with rapid discussion before the director's energy form stabilized. The council provisionally agrees, pending formal approval from our respective governments. The Ancient One's matrix swirled with colors beyond human perception. An elegant solution to a complex problem. Very well. We will begin with those assembled here, teaching you to understand and control your continuing evolution. Through you, your peoples will learn what awaits them. As the matrix began to envelop the volunteers, Marcus felt Kezrat's crystalline appendage grasp his hand. Ready for another experiment? She asked, her voice carrying both excitement and nervousness. Marcus grinned. Well, we've already got 40,000 years of data on human Zekthar genetic compatibility. Might as well see what happens when we add a few more species to the mix. Somewhere in the quantum foam of reality, the ancient scientists were definitely saying, "See, this is why you always keep detailed research notes." The matrix closed around them, and evolution took another leap forward. The experiment continued, but this time, All the subjects were willing participants in their own transformation. The future of life in the galaxy hung in the balance, but at least they were facing it together. The transformation chamber aboard the GSS Convergence defied conventional physics. Within its crystalline walls, reality bent and folded like origami in the hands of a master craftsman. Marcus floated in the center, his body suspended in a matrix of pure possibility, as the Ancient Ones began their work. "Remarkable," observed one of the ancient beings, its thoughts resonating through the genetic network that now connected all the volunteers. "Your existing modifications have already begun adapting to our presence. The potential for further evolution exceeds our projections." Through the translucent walls, Marcus could see the other chambers where his fellow volunteers underwent their own transformations. Khazrat's crystalline form sparkled with new frequencies of light, while Director Valax's energy pattern had developed complexities that hurt the human mind to observe. "The process is bidirectional," another Ancient One noted with what felt like scientific satisfaction. "They're not simply accepting our modifications, they're innovating upon them." Marcus understood what they meant. Even as his consciousness expanded to encompass new dimensions of reality, he found himself instinctively reshaping the incoming changes, adapting them to human neural architecture in ways the Ancient Ones hadn't anticipated. Around him, the other volunteers were doing the same, each species contributing its unique perspective to the transformation process. "Integration reaching critical threshold," announced one of the ancient observers. "Prepare for cognitive synchronization." The moment it happened, Marcus realized why the Ancient Ones had insisted on starting with a small group. The sensation of multiple consciousness merging into a unified field of awareness was overwhelming enough with just their limited number of volunteers. If they had attempted this with entire populations at once, the psychic shock would have been catastrophic. "Welcome," the Ancient Ones thought, spoke, transmitted, to the next level of existence. Marcus found himself simultaneously aware of his individual human consciousness and connected to a vast network of shared experience. He could feel Khazrat's crystalline precision, Valax's energy state mathematics, and the unique sensory interpretations of every other volunteer. More than that, he could feel the Ancient Ones themselves, their multidimensional awareness spanning eons of time and space. "This is..." Khazrat's thought rippled through their shared consciousness. "Unprecedented. The implications for scientific research alone are secondary to the immediate concerns," Director Valax interrupted, his energy form pulsing with urgent purpose. "The dimensional barriers you mentioned, they're already starting to break down, aren't they?" The Ancient One's collective consciousness darkened slightly. "Yes, observe." Their shared perception expanded, and Marcus gasped as he saw reality itself beginning to fray around the edges. Microscopic tears in space-time were appearing and healing themselves constantly, like a fabric being stretched to its limits. "The universe is entering a phase of fundamental restructuring," the Ancient Ones explained. "What you perceive as physical laws are about to become negotiable. Only beings capable of conscious evolution will be able to adapt quickly enough to survive. And that's why you modified us," Marcus realized, the truth becoming clear in their shared understanding. "Not just to prepare us for this moment, but to help us guide others through it." "Precisely. Your species, all of you, were chosen for your complementary attributes. Humans understand adaptation. Zekthar comprehend precision. Arcturians grasp temporal mechanics. Together, you form a template for survival." Through their expanded awareness, Marcus could feel the other volunteers processing this information, each adding their unique insights to their collective understanding. The implications were staggering. They weren't just test subjects in an evolutionary experiment. They were being groomed as teachers for what came next. "The transition has already begun," the Ancient Ones continued. "Even now, the changes are cascading through reality. Your modified genetics will allow you to survive and adapt, but others will need guidance." Khazrat's consciousness sparkled with sudden realization. "But the pilot program, it wasn't just about testing the transformation process, was it? You're training us to become guides for our own species." "Indeed. Each of you will serve as a bridge between what is and what must be. Through you, others will learn to navigate the changing nature of reality itself." Marcus felt a ripple of amusement through their shared awareness. "So no pressure, right? We just have to help entire civilizations transcend their current form of existence." The Ancient One's response carried a distinct sense of approval. "Your species' capacity for humor in the face of monumental challenges continues to prove valuable. Yes, the task ahead is immense, but you will not face it alone." As if to demonstrate this point, their shared consciousness expanded further, revealing other groups of modified beings across the galaxy, other pilot programs, other volunteers learning to bridge the gap between normal space and what lay beyond. They weren't alone in this endeavor. They were part of a galaxy-wide network of evolution guides. "The next phase begins now," the Ancient Ones announced. "You have mastered individual transformation. Now you must learn to guide others through the process." The transformation chamber's walls became transparent, revealing the rest of the GSS Convergence's crew, watching with a mixture of awe and apprehension. These would be their first students, the beginning of a cascade that would eventually encompass all sapient life in the galaxy. "Remember," the Ancient Ones advised, "each species will approach this differently. Some will embrace change eagerly, others will resist. Your task is not to force evolution, but to guide it, to show what's possible while respecting each being's choice in how they adapt." Marcus looked at Kezrat, their consciousnesses intertwined yet distinct. "Well," he thought spoke, "we did want to bridge the gap between species, though I don't think either of us expected to do it quite so literally." Kezrat's response carried both humor and determination. "At least we'll have interesting data to publish, assuming scientific journals still exist in a post-physical reality." "Speaking of data," Director Vilax interjected, his energy form now capable of expressions that would have been impossible before their transformation. "I believe it's time we began documenting this process for future reference." The Ancient One's collective consciousness rippled with what felt distinctly like laughter. "Always the researchers, even in the midst of transcendence. This is why we chose you." As the transformation chamber's fields began to stabilize, preparing them for their first attempts at guiding others through the process, Marcus couldn't help but think that somewhere, those original Zeke-Thar scientists who had modified human DNA were feeling pretty smug about now. After all, their unauthorized experiment had just helped save every species in the galaxy. To be continued.